Hey, I'm April, and this is Bitch Pet Podcast. Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome back or welcome to the podcast. If you've never heard from me before, this is the Bitch Pet Podcast, and I'm very happy to have you here. For anybody that celebrates Thanksgiving, I hope you had or are going to have a great day, depending on whenever you listen to this episode. If you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, then I hope you had a great month, and if not, I hope the next month is better for you. Me personally, I'm not very fond of Thanksgiving, mainly because it's a holiday centered around food. And 95% of the food that's served, I do not like. So I don't really get super excited about this holiday. It's just another day for me. But if you enjoyed this holiday, like I know my husband does, then I hope you had a bunch of delicious food and you're surrounded by good people. Or if you wanted to just stay at home and do nothing and be by yourself, I hope you did that and I hope you enjoyed it. Regardless, however you want to celebrate the holiday, I hope you did, and I hope you had fun, and I hope you enjoyed yourself. I also want to give a shout out to one of my listeners because he gave me this idea for what to title this episode. I normally don't have the titles in mind when I'm recording. It usually comes to me a bit later, or sometimes even the day I'm posting it, I still need a title and I have to figure out a song that fits the episode. But he gave me this suggestion a couple months back and I've been sitting on it. And then when I finally decided what I was going to make this episode about, I was like, I can't not pick this song because it's literally the best song. So thank you to my loyal listener for the suggestion. So during this past month, I've been scrolling on my phone thanks to the unemployment. And one of the things that I kept kind of seeing is that people were talking about were how no one talks about the rage and frustration and like the anger that people go through when they're trying to heal from trauma. And it's true, nobody talks about it. And I do think that it should be talked about more. So that's what I'm going to talk about. But before we get into all of that, I want to thank everybody that listened to last month's episode and anyone that listened to any past episodes, not just last month. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to what I have to say. I think within like the past week alone, I had a couple people like listening to my whole podcast playlist. So thank you so much for that. That's awesome. I hope you enjoyed it. And I love when I get those types of notifications. They just make my whole day. So thank you. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like, subscribe, follow the podcast on social media. It's Bitch Bet Podcast, all one word with an I. And if you want to support the podcast in any way, I do have a Patreon. I'm still kind of figuring out what to fully do with Patreon. So if you want something specific from that platform, let me know and I can try and do that for you. Anything and everything is always very much appreciated. Okay. So trauma. It sucks. It fucking sucks. And I would say it's probably one of the most unfair and most unjustifiable things that can happen to a person because in most cases, someone somewhere hates a part of themselves, hates themselves entirely, or hates their situation, or just hates their life. They hate something about themselves and decide to take their pain and their bullshit and their anger out on somebody who doesn't deserve it for no other reason than to just take it out on somebody. And I think that's wrong. I think that's so fucked up. And it's never justified to hurt somebody else just because you're hurting or because you don't know how to deal with it. If you don't know how to deal with it and you're a grown-ass adult, then there's enough resources for you to be able to figure it the fuck out. Google does exist, and a lot of other search engines besides Google also exist that can give you a lot of answers to any questions that you might ask. Sometimes it's like a generational thing, so I'm sure in some situation that was the case for me. Maybe, I have no fucking idea. I'll probably never know, and at this point, I really don't care. And so that's where your great-grandparents treated your grandmother terribly, so then she treated your mom terribly, so then your mom treated you terribly. And then, like, the whole cycle keeps repeating, and that's, like, what generational trauma is. And that's also not okay. Maybe it's just me, but I always was under the assumption that you want better for your children, and putting your pain onto them isn't better. It's just the same thing that your parents did to you. Because no one ever deserves to be traumatized. And if anybody wants to say anything different, you're fucking wrong. Because you don't deserve to be traumatized. You don't deserve to be treated poorly for any reason, let alone the fact that the person treating you poorly hates themselves in some way, shape, or form. Majority of the time, the traumatized person didn't do anything wrong. And they were never the problem. They weren't the problem, which is true. You weren't the problem, and it wasn't because you did something to deserve it and you didn't do anything wrong. You were enough then, and you are enough now. And frankly, I feel like it says more about the person doing the traumatizing than it does being the person that was traumatized. Because a lot of the times people are just out there living, minding their own business, doing their own thing, and then someone just decides that they don't like that and force their bullshit onto you. And I just hate that. And it's just annoying, and it's such bullshit. And I think where a lot of the rage and the anger and the frustration come from, where if you do decide to heal from your trauma instead of forcing it onto somebody else, which also, by the way, if you force your trauma onto somebody else because you don't know any better, that doesn't fix your trauma. Like, you still have trauma that you need to work through, and now you just put more pain out in the world because you didn't know any better. And I think that's just shitty. So if you end up deciding that you're going to learn to heal from your trauma, then you have to now clean up a mess that you didn't make. And that's annoying, and it's frustrating. And because you were just out there living your life, minding your own business, and then someone just decided to come fuck your shit up, and now you have to fix what they messed up. And it's bullshit, because what I think a lot of people don't realize is how trauma rewires your entire brain. And for all the greatness that the brain can do, it can also end up being your own worst enemy. And since you can't just turn off your brain, you're stuck with it, and it torments you, and it makes you relive things that you'd rather not think about. And when someone who experiences trauma, they develop coping mechanisms to cope with that trauma and just be able to make it to the next day. And your body basically just lives in a constant state of fight or flight, and it's just in survival mode. So then once you're out of that trauma, we have things like defense mechanisms. And sometimes in cases where the trauma is so severe, your brain will decide to create a whole entire different personality, which is how people get multiple personality disorder. And there's just so many different things that the brain will do to protect itself. Like, for my situation, it suppressed the memories. So it just decided to put them in a box and put the box up somewhere in the back of the brain. Like, yeah, we're not gonna deal with this now because she can't handle it. But future April, she'll be able to handle it. So we'll save it for her. And when you start to unpack all of this and you start to work through the box and work through all the things and work through all the pain and the shame and the bullshit, because it's bullshit. You just sometimes sit there and you're like, what the fuck? Because, like, we were taught from a young age, for the most part, that when you do something wrong, there's consequences. But most of the time, when it comes to trauma, like the ones that did the traumatizing, a lot of us are still waiting for their consequences. And so it gets to the point that you're just sitting there with all of these broken pieces and all of this and this whole mess, and you're just like, what the actual fuck? Like, where's the justice? Why do I have to deal with this when I never asked for this problem? I didn't do anything to warrant this problem, and somebody somewhere just decided that I needed to have this problem and that I needed to fix this problem that I never even created. And it's so annoying and it's so frustrating, and you're just like, what do they have to deal with? Because it seems like they just get to go off and live their life like nothing fucking happened, and they're just this fucking shitty person experiencing life, while I'm a non-shitty person and I have to deal with all of this giant bag of shit that they gave me. And then you have situations where you think you're making progress. And anytime I talk about trauma, like, this analogy comes into my brain, especially like a healing journey of, like, you have this deep cut on your arm and it's like this open wound. And like the healing journey is, okay, like, to start healing this open wound, you have to like rinse it out and clean it out and get all the gook out of it, and you have to disinfect it so that way it doesn't become infected and create bigger problems. And that situation in and of itself is already a painful experience, because you're having to put like soap and disinfectant into this open wound, which is painful. And then you like put some healing ointment on it, and then you wrap it up and bandage it all nicely. And you're like, okay, we have progress. It's not bleeding anymore. It's not making this bigger mess. Okay, like, we're starting to get somewhere. And then you're out living your life with your bandaged arm. And then out of nowhere, somebody just comes up and rips the bandage right off and rips the scab off with it. And now your arm is just gushing blood. And you're like, cool, now I have to start the whole thing all over again. So then you have to go in, clean it out, disinfect it, like, do the whole process all over again. And only to have some other person come up and rip the bandage off. Or maybe it's not another person and you're the one doing, ripping the bandage off. And it's just a constant cycle of over and over and over again. And it's so exhausting. It's so exhausting. And it seems like it's never going to end. And you're constantly feeling like as soon as you get all the pieces back together and you're about to start gluing it, it falls apart. And then if you're like living with the people that you were that traumatized you, or you are still like, you still see them out and about in the world, and then you get a glimpse of them and you're just like, fuck you. Like, why do I have to deal with this? And then you have triggers, and sometimes the triggers are the thing that rips off the Band-Aid. And you then have to not only learn how to unpack your trauma and to feel all the feelings and to, cope with those feelings. And when trauma decides to rear its ugly head again 3 weeks from now, like, you have to navigate healing multiple parts of yourself. And it's hard. It's so hard and it's so frustrating, and it's worth it. I'm not going to like dump all this on you and be like, it's not worth it, I wish I never did it. Because I do. Because I like to think of myself as a better person than the people that traumatized me. And I am a better person, to be completely honest. And I was probably born a better person than they were. And I say better instead of bigger because I had to be the bigger person for a majority of my childhood, and I'm fucking sick of it. I hated it then and I hate it now, but the only difference is now I don't have to be the bigger person if I don't want to. And the reason why I hate, oh, just be the bigger person. No, I'm not going to do that. Because I had to, in so many situations with a grown-ass adult, I had to be the bigger person when I wasn't even legally an adult yet. And I had to be the bigger person. And I had to rise above and do all, that stuff. And nothing ever really happened. She was still a shitty person. And she continued to be a shitty person. And more times than not, I got in trouble because she didn't like that, she wasn't getting whatever reaction she wanted from me. So I'm not going to be the bigger person. If you want to start that game with me and you want to go low, I'll go to fucking hell. I have no problems with that. It's going to be fucking warm and I'm always cold. So I can win this and I'll sleep just fine. So I always say be the better person because you can still be a savage and not take anybody's shit and still be a better person. And you can still be a good person. So that's what I like to live by. That's the motto that I have for myself. And over the last couple of months, I've kind of come to the realization of the bullshit stops with me. So even though I'll never know if I have generational trauma or not, I probably do. I don't know. It's a 50-50 shot. Whenever I have kids someday, I want to make sure that I don't treat them the way that my own mother treated me. And I want to be the type of mom that I should have had. And something that I don't think anybody else talks about when it comes to trauma is is how you look at things differently and you process things differently. Like, for example, I don't look at opposite sex siblings the same as everybody else in the world. I look at them very differently because I almost have like a tainted view because of the situation that I grew up with when I had an older brother, and we not only did not have the best relationship, we had like no relationship at all, and he still is a terrible fucking person, and he did unspeakable things to me that should never happen between siblings. So whether it's like in a book that I'm reading or a TV show or a movie that I'm watching, or just like anything that involves any level of intimacy between a opposite sex sibling pair, I question it. And I kind of always am looking or trying to find like what undertone motive like one of them has. And like I've noticed that about myself relatively recently. Like I think I was like watching a show, and like it was a simple scene where, I know exactly what it was. We were watching The Cat in the Hat with Mike Myers, because my husband had never seen that movie, and I was like, you dirty hoe is like the best line in that whole movie. But anyway, so we were watching that movie, and at the end of the movie, Conrad and Sally were the two siblings, and all they did was they held each other's hand because they knew the house was wrecked and mom was about to come home and they were going to get in a whole lot of trouble. And they just held each other's hand to like show support that they're with the other person. And I just looked at that and I just like turned my head, and I was like, my first thought was like, that's not okay. Like, that's weird. Why are they doing that? And I started questioning it when it's a very simple, innocent thing that probably normal brothers and sisters experience all the time. It's just a, hey, I'm here for you type of thing. And I question it. I look at it differently. I have the taintedness to those types of situations. And I was even talking to my husband a while ago, because we always talk about kids. And for the longest time, we've battled that, he's like, we're going to have a girl first. And I'm like, no, we're going to have a boy first, because we have our own reasonings. But I'm like, no, I think we're going to have a boy first. And then anyway, and the last couple of months, I was like, honestly, like, I do kind of want to have the boy first, because I've always had that idealism that the older brother protects like the younger siblings. Why I still have that one, I have no idea, because that's not what happened with me. But I was then like, I don't know what possessed my situation where an older brother turned on his little sister. But I was like, I don't know what created that monster. And I would really hate to have a son and then a daughter and her be in the same position that I was in. And because I don't know what created him. And I don't want to unintentionally create, my own monster. So I was like, I kind of am switching sides. I'm like, I kind of want a girl first. That way that situation never even has to repeat itself. And so those are kind of like triggers that I've noticed that I have, and I have to kind of work through them. And this could be a hot take, but I don't really think it's all that hot. But I think that triggers are nobody's responsibility but yours. You're responsible for your triggers. You're responsible for managing your triggers and to have them not be triggers anymore. Like, I don't like the phrase, that's triggering for me. Like, I just hate it, because I'm just like, then deal with it. If it's triggering, then deal with it. Unpack it. Why is it triggering you? And what can you do to avoid it triggering you in the future? Like, there's work to be done, and you making it my problem that you're now triggered is not my problem to fix. I've already fixed other people's problems that they've dropped into my lap. I'm not going to fix yours. So you have to learn to like deal with your own triggers. And what triggers, I've said this a couple times in the episode, but basically psychological triggers is what they're actually called, or trauma triggers, are events or stimuli that cause specific emotional reactions or behaviors. They can evoke memories, feelings, acute symptoms related to mental illness. Triggers have two components, the event and the reaction of it. So basically what a trigger does is it, for lack of better words, triggers your body into a fight or flight response. So even if you're not in danger and it's just something that triggered a memory for you, even though that situation that you're in isn't in, like, you are in danger, your body goes, I disagree. Because your mind takes you back to the place of trauma, and now your body is reliving that. And triggers aren't, like, they're just normal, ordinary things that can happen in like conversation or just throughout the day. And then you just hear it, see it, smell it. And you're just like, oh shit, I'm back there. Which is another thing that rips the Band-Aid off, because sometimes you don't notice that you have triggers until something gets triggered, and then it's more that you have to unpack. So you not only have to work on healing the trauma, but then you have to like unpack the triggers and make sure they are not a problem anymore to continue with your healing journey. And sometimes I feel like the healing journey never really ends, because like life always happens, and like something else could happen to elicit another traumatized, situation. So whether it's a person or just like a natural or like an event, like sometimes natural disasters can be triggering. I had a house fire when I was a kid. Granted, it was a natural disaster, but like it was still like a very big, significant event. Thankfully, I didn't get traumatized from it. I think it was because I had enough going on at the time. My brain was just like, we're okay with this. This just happens. We're good. We processed that situation fine, but it was the rest of it that my brain was like, we're going to deal with this later. But I can see how it can be a triggering or a traumatizing event. And so something that my therapist would always say during our time together was that she was giving me the tools to put in my toolbox so that way I can use later, which basically was just like, I'm showing you how to cope with all of these things and how to do it in a healthy way and how to like resolve all of these mental issues that you have. So that way later on in life, when something else causes your mental health to just kind of go to the bad place, basically, you have some things, some tools in your toolbox that you can use to kind of help yourself through it. And I mean, she was right, because after the glass shattered and I realized what happened between me and my older brother, I didn't go back to therapy. My husband wanted me to, but I was like, no, like, let me see if I can work on this stuff. And I was able to, but I still have, you know, like times where I'm just sitting there and minding my own business, and I'll just get like a flashback that just like flashes across my brain. And sometimes it happens out of nowhere. Sometimes I, like what I'm reading or what I'm watching will cause it to come up. And for a while, I was just like, okay, I'm not thinking about this. And I was like, I understand what it, like where it's coming from, and you know, I can logic my way around it, but I'm just like, I'm not dealing with this. I don't want to deal with this right now. I don't want to think about it. So I'll like brush it off and like put it back in the closet and be like, I'll deal with you later. And then it just keeps kind of showing up. And so something I've learned recently is when you're not like talking about those memories or anything that's kind of pestering or tormenting your mind, if you're not talking about it, whether it's to a licensed therapist, I know that's not always feasible because nothing is affordable in this current moment in time. I think mental health should be free, but I don't have the money for that, but that is a soapbox that I will always stand on. Or if you can't go to a therapist or you don't like therapy, it's not your thing, which is fine. Like your partner or confidant or sometimes even a stranger, just, or sometimes even also to yourself, like you have to just get it out in some way, shape, or form. Because the more you just think about it, like it, or you don't deal with it, it gives those things more power. So I don't like talking about those types of flashbacks that I get because I feel like I'm tormented enough with these memories and with these details that I don't need anybody else to know them, and I don't want them to be tormented with those details. So I just kind of decided, I'm like, this is just something, the details stay with me, and it's just something I'm going to have to deal with and work through. So I've actually started journaling. I'm like a journal girly now. I have like 5 different notebooks that I use like for various different things. But one of them, I call it my just get it out notebook. And it's for times where those flashbacks come up, and I've learned that I just need to sit there and be in the flashback for a little bit and be like, okay, why is this coming up? What are the feelings that this brings up? Why is it getting brought up? And, you know, I have to unpack it. And so when I have those moments where either my mental state just kind of starts drifting to the bad place, or I have those flashbacks, or I'm not in a good mood, I'll just start writing and I'll just get it out that way, and to try and like figure it out and see what I can start working on. But it still sucks, and there's still various justifiable reasons for the anger, because I still find myself slipping into it from time to time. If I think about it for too long, I'm just like, why did I have to deal with this? Like, why did I have to go through these specific things? Like, and it can be frustrating to ask those questions because you're probably never going to get the answers to it. So that's one reason to be frustrated. but like you're just trying to move on and you're trying to put it behind you, and then it just seems like something that's never gonna be you're ever gonna be rid of fully. Like it's always gonna linger around for like, 2 to 5% or whatever. And that can be frustrating, but it does get better. Something that I read recently that I think is helping my mindset with it is because a lot of people will be like, oh, like your trauma made you strong. Like, your trauma makes you stronger. And the post was like, no, it doesn't. Trauma makes you traumatized. And I was like, fucking facts. Like, it doesn't make me stronger. And I think me switching that thought pattern where it's like, my trauma doesn't make me stronger. It made me traumatized. I made myself stronger from healing from it. Me healing from my trauma is what made me stronger. My trauma just made me traumatized. Because I think my problem is that the saying like trauma makes you stronger, like glorified the trauma. And I'm like, what's so fucking great about it? Like from beginning to end, it was shit. But I, for some reason, had to deal with it and I had to go through it, and like somebody else had to just put that on me. And so when I started thinking about it, I'm like, no, trauma traumatized you. Healing from it is what made you stronger. It has really started to help me. And I'm just like, yes, I'm doing the work. I'm making myself the better person. And I'm making sure that the trauma stops with me. I'm never going to be like them. I'm never going to be like the people that traumatized me. If not for yourself, do it out of spite. Because fuck them. I'm this person and I'm a better person despite them. No matter what they did to me or how much they tried to hurt me, I wasn't broken. They didn't break me. And I am able to put all that behind me where it belongs, in the trash. But if you're in your healing journey and you're not at that stage yet, that's fine. If you're still very much deep into the rage stage, I feel it, and I'm with you. We can rage together. I'm very familiar with rage. If you don't know already, you can go back and listen to episode 6, Mansion. And even though I don't have a lot of reasons to be angry or be frustrated currently, that switch is never too far away. I'm always close to it, and it's always within reach. But keep going. I promise it is worth it. It may suck right now, and it may suck tomorrow, and it may suck for a little bit longer. But it eventually does get better, and it does and you do feel lighter, and it's worth it. In my opinion, it's really worth it. But let me know your thoughts on what had you frustrated and what made you feel your rage during your healing journeys, because I would love to hear them. We're getting into holiday season, so I hope that you enjoy any and all holidays that you celebrate. And I hope that you have a great time doing it, and you're with amazing people while you're doing it. Or if you want to be by yourself the whole time, be by yourself the whole time. And I hope you have a lot of great snacks. If you liked this episode, please like it, rate it, subscribe to the podcast. You can follow me on all my socials, which is Bitch Bet Podcast, one word with an I. If you want to support the podcast in absolutely any way that you want to, check out my Patreon. And if you have anything specific that you would want me to do on there, let me know, and I can work on that for you. As always, all the negative voices in your head, bitch bet, and I will see you guys after the holidays. Talk to you later. Thanks so much for listening. Until we talk again next time.